I knew something was wrong the night my daughter cried in my arms, and her husband smiled like nothing happened. That's the part one still can't forget. The way she trembled against my shoulder, trying to steady her breath, wiping her tears quickly like a child afraid of being caught. And the way he stood at the doorway, hands in his pockets, leaning casually, like her pain was nothing more than a momentary inconvenience. He said, "She gets emotional sometimes," as if that explained everything. But a mother knows. A mother feels the truth before it's spoken. I didn't know the whole story yet. Not the fear she hid. Not the things she covered with long sleeves. Not the reason she lingered at my doorstep every time she had to leave. All I knew is this: my daughter never used to cry like that before she got married. And that night, as she walked back to their car, glancing at me over her shoulder with those pleading eyes, I felt something tighten inside my chest. A warning. A cold whisper of truth. But I pushed it down, the way mothers do when the world suddenly feels bigger than their own strength. Before all of this, my daughter, my sweet Emily, was sunshine wrapped in skin. She was laughter in a room, warmth on a cold morning, the smell of cinnamon when she walked into the kitchen. She'd sit on the counter while I cooked breakfast, swinging her legs like she used to when she was little. "Mom," she'd say, "I'm never marrying someone who doesn't love your cooking as much as I do." And then she married Daniel. He arrived in our lives like a polished photograph, handsome, confident, the charming type who laughs loudly but never fully smiles. My husband used to say that men like him know how to talk to a room, but not to a heart. Still, I wanted to believe in her choice. She was happy. Or at least, she looked happy. After the wedding, Sunday dinners became our ritual. Emily would come early to help me chop vegetables, humming old songs I used to sing around the house. But over time, little things began to change. She'd flinch when her phone vibrated. She'd jump when a loud sound came from the living room. She'd apologize excessively. "Sorry, Mom. Sorry. I didn't mean to drop that. Sorry," for things too small to matter. One afternoon, while we were slicing tomatoes, she cut her finger. A tiny cut, barely a nick. But she panicked, pulling her hand away as if she'd done something terribly wrong. "I'm fine," she whispered quickly. "It's okay. It's okay. Don't make it a big deal." I wasn't making it a big deal. But someone else clearly was. Still, I kept quiet. I watched. I waited. Because mothers learn to gather the truth like breadcrumbs. And I knew, eventually, they would lead somewhere. The real shift came during one of our Sunday dinners. Emily and Daniel arrived late. She walked in first, her hair pulled tight, her smile thinner than usual. Daniel followed behind her, placing a hand on her shoulder lightly, as if guiding her or controlling her pace. At first glance, I couldn't decide which. We sat for dinner, the four of us around the table, me, my husband, my daughter, and the man who had become the center of her world, and the shadow of it too. Conversation was polite. Too polite. Emily barely spoke. She picked at her food and kept her eyes lowered. Daniel, on the other hand, talked enough for both of them, about his job promotions, his new car, his busy schedule. Then, while cutting his steak, he chuckled, "She cries all the time at home. You know how sensitive she gets." My fork froze midway to my mouth. Emily's eyes widened. Color drained from her face. She didn't look at him. She looked at me. And in that 1 second, something cracked open. Because her expression wasn't embarrassment. It was fear. The kind of fear a mother recognizes instantly, the kind no daughter ever wants her mother to see. She whispered, barely audible, "Daniel, don't." He laughed again, waving his hand. "Oh, come on, Em. They're your parents. They know you're emotional." My husband tried to ease the tension, asking a different question, but the air was already heavy. And then I saw it. Just a glimpse. A small, yellowish mark near Emily's wrist as her sleeve shifted. A bruise. Old enough to fade, but not old enough to forget. She tugged her sleeve back down quickly, too quickly. My stomach dropped. Still, I said nothing. Not yet. Because spoken too soon, truth can scatter. But held carefully, it reveals itself fully. Later that night, when they were leaving, I walked them to the door. Emily hugged me tight, too tight, her fingers digging into my back like she was anchoring herself to something safe. When she pulled away, her eyes were glossy. "I'll call you tomorrow," she whispered. Daniel stepped behind her, opening the door. "Emily," he murmured, "we're late." But she looked at me, not him. And I knew my daughter was trying to tell me something without speaking a single word. A mother can hear the scream behind the silence. As their car pulled out of the driveway, my husband came beside me. "You felt it too?" I nodded. "Yes. Something is wrong." He sighed deeply, the kind of sigh that comes from a place of helplessness. But I wasn't helpless. Not anymore. Because that bruise, that trembling, that fearful glance, they were the breadcrumbs I had been waiting for. And soon enough, Daniel's own tongue would give me the truth he thought I would never hear. I always thought my daughter, Lena, carried her emotions like fragile glass, beautiful, clear, but easy to crack. Even as a little girl, she cried when butterflies landed on her hand. She cried when her father surprised her with a bicycle because the gesture felt too big. But over time, those tears softened into the kind you wipe away with a laugh, the harmless ones that come from love overflowing. So the first night, she cried at my doorstep after marriage. I told myself it was nothing. She stood there in her blue shawl, her breathing shaky but controlled, her smile small and trembling at the edges. "Ma, could I stay for just a little while?" she whispered. "Of course, my baby," I said, brushing her hair behind her ear the way I used to when she was 10. She sat at the dining table, tracing her finger along the wooden grain, talking about her day. Not the topics, no details about her home, her husband, her new routines. Just the day. I didn't notice the first while, it was subtle. The way she flinched when a spoon slipped from my hand. The way her eyes darted toward the door whenever a car slowed outside. The way her shoulders tensed at the slightest noise. Back then, I thought she was just adjusting to married life. But mothers, our hearts are tuned differently. There are frequencies only we can hear. Before all the cracks appeared, life felt normal. Weekends smelled like ginger tea. My tiny garden was full of red hibiscus and tiny green chilies that Lena always joked were spicy enough to fight. My son lived out of state, so it was just me and the gentle quiet of my house. When Lena got engaged, everything changed. She glowed in a way I'd never seen before, excited, nervous, hopeful. Her fiancé, Rafiq, had a soft smile and a manner that seemed polite enough. He spoke gently, with a calm voice that, at the time, made me trust him. They had a small wedding, simple but sweet. I remember holding her hands before she walked down the aisle. "You look beautiful," I said. "You look scared," I meant. She replied, "Ma, everything will be okay," but her eyes said something else. Something I brushed away because the world told me this was a normal kind of nervousness. And then marriage absorbed her. In the early weeks, she visited often. Every 2 days, she'd come by with a box of sweets or a silly story. We'd cook together. She'd help me fold laundry. Sometimes we just sat with our feet up, doing nothing. But gradually, almost quietly, her visits began to carry a pattern. She didn't come to relax. She came to breathe. And each time she left, her tears grew heavier. She tried to hide them. Her face turned away from the light, her fingers wiping quickly, her smile too tight. "Why do you cry when you leave, sweetheart?" She'd shake her head. "Just missing you, Ma." But mothers know when a smile is stitched by fear. The real shift happened one quiet Tuesday evening. I was making dal, stirring it gently so it wouldn't burn. The smell of turmeric, cumin, and garlic filled the house. Lena walked in without knocking, her eyes swollen, her breath uneven. "Sit," I whispered, guiding her to a chair. She sat, but she didn't speak. Her hands, those same hands that once braided my hair, held her school notebooks, painted little flowers on weekends, were trembling. "Tell me what happened." She only shook her head. Her shawl slipped, and she pulled it back quickly, too quickly. That was the moment something in me froze. For the rest of the evening, she acted the way someone acts when they are holding a secret with both hands, terrified it will fall and shatter loudly on the floor. She left after dark, and her tears that night were silent, but they were not small. Then came the dinner. The night everything changed. Rafiq invited me. A family dinner, he called it. His voice on the phone was warm, almost cheerful. I remember thinking maybe this was the beginning of healing. Maybe marriage was just tough for them, the way it is for many young couples. I wore a simple sari, packed some dessert, and told myself to hope. The moment I entered their apartment, I felt the tension. The living room was spotless, too spotless. The kind of spotless that feels like someone cleaned to avoid criticism. Rafiq smiled too wide. Lena smiled too little. During dinner, the clatter of cutlery echoed in the silence. Nobody spoke much. Until Rafiq let out a small, irritated sigh and said a sentence that made the entire room shift. She wouldn't act like this if she knew how to behave properly. He didn't look at me. He looked at her. And the way Lena's shoulders folded inward, the way her breath hitched, the way her fingers tightened under the table, it was like watching someone instinctively brace for something she expected but wished wouldn't come. My fork slipped from my hand. And Lena flinched. Not softly. Not subtly. A reflex. A fear. A message, loud and clear. My heart dropped into my stomach. I knew. I didn't need bruises. I didn't need words. I didn't need evidence. A mother knows when her child is hurting and hiding. And I knew my daughter was hiding everything. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drag her out that moment. But I didn't. Because she looked at me with eyes that begged, "Not now, Ma. Please, not now." So I stayed silent. And that silence tasted bitter on my tongue. But it was the beginning. The beginning of the truth. I barely slept the night after that dinner. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lena's shoulders shrinking, her breath catching, her eyes begging me not to intervene. There is a kind of silence that mothers carry, the kind that feels like a stone in the chest. Mine stayed with me until morning. I called her the next day, not to interrogate, just to hear her voice. "Ma," she answered, sounding small. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes." "Are you okay?" "Yes." "Did he, Ma, please?" "I'm fine." The speed of her answer hurt more than the words. She wanted to hang up before truth found its way out. But truth has a habit of slipping through cracks. As she spoke, I heard something faint, her breath catching when someone walked behind her, and her voice lowering, almost shrinking. "Is Rafiq home?" I asked softly. Another too quick answer. No, her tone said otherwise. I didn't push. Because when someone is afraid, pressure doesn't free them. It only buries them deeper. The next few days were full of little clues. Small things, the kind most people would overlook. But mothers don't overlook. They collect pieces. I noticed she stopped sending the little voice notes she used to love recording. She sent only short texts now, careful, edited, almost rehearsed. I noticed she visited only when he was at work, never on weekends. And even then, she came with an urgency, as if she had only minutes before a clock ran out. I noticed she smiled, but the smile never reached her eyes. Once, she came over with a scarf wrapped tight around her neck. Too tight for the weather. I didn't ask why. She already looked terrified I would. Instead, I made her tea and sat quietly beside her, letting my presence say what my words could not. "You don't have to hide from me." But every time I tried to approach the subject even gently, she changed it. "Ma, how's the garden doing?" "Ma, did you watch that show I told you about?" "Ma, I should clean the dishes." "Ma, I think I should go now." It was like she lived suspended between wanting to stay and needing to run. And the way she looked back at the door before leaving, like someone checking if the world outside was safe, told me everything I needed to know. One Sunday afternoon, I decided to surprise her with groceries and some of her favorite snacks. I told myself it was innocent, harmless. But when I reached their building, I froze halfway up the stairs. Voices. Not loud, not shouting, but sharp. Lena's voice trembled. Rafiq's voice low, controlled, cold. I said I don't like it when you leave without telling me. I just want to see my mom. You don't just go. You ask. Rafiq, please. The sound of something hitting the table, not a person, but enough to send a message, cut her words short. I felt my hands turn cold. I wasn't imagining anything. This was real. I almost knocked, almost barged in, almost dragged her out of there like she was still my little girl hiding behind my sari. But again, I heard that familiar tone in her voice. Please, don't make this worse. Not spoken to me, spoken to him. And I knew if I knocked, I'd only bring his anger onto her head later. So I stepped back. Down one stair. Then another. I left. Not because I was weak. Because she was. And until a woman finds her voice, even her mother's strength can't save her. The next clue arrived unexpectedly. 2 days later, my phone rang. Ma, can I come over? Her voice was soft, shaking. She sounded like a little girl again. Of course, sweetheart. She arrived within minutes. No shawl this time. No careful makeup. Just tired eyes and trembling hands. She sat down on the sofa and hugged a pillow close to her chest. I didn't rush her. I didn't stare. I didn't breathe too loudly. Eventually, she whispered, "Do you think it's normal to feel scared in your own home?" My heart cracked, but my face stayed calm. "What makes you feel scared?" She didn't answer. Her fingers tightened around the pillow. She looked down at her wrist and quickly pulled her sleeve down again fast, instinctive, like someone who had practiced hiding. "Lena," I said gently. But she shook her head. "I'm just stressed," she whispered. "Marriage is hard." She wasn't lying. But she wasn't telling the truth either. She stood up abruptly, wiping away tears she didn't want me to see. "I should go. He doesn't like when I'm away too long." And there it was. The admission she didn't realize she had spoken. Not, "He misses me." Not, "He worries about me." Not, "He wants me home." "He doesn't like when I'm away too long." A controlling sentence. A sentence soaked with fear. I walked her to the door, and just before she stepped out, I touched her cheek. "You deserve to feel safe," I said softly. For a moment, her eyes glistened, as if she might say something. But fear closed her throat. She only whispered, "I know." And then she left. That night, I sat alone at my dining table, staring at the phone, hoping she would call. But she didn't. Instead, something else happened. Something small. But it cut deeper than anything yet. A message from her phone. Not a text. Just a photo. A photo of a flower vase on my dining table. But I hadn't taken it. And neither had she, not voluntarily. Someone had taken her phone, opened our chat, and sent a meaningless photo. A test. A warning. A line of control. My stomach dropped. Because that photo told me only one thing. He was watching her. Every message. Every call. Every visit. Every breath. And now, he was watching me too. The clues were no longer small. The threat was no longer subtle. The fear was no longer imagined. I knew. And now, I had to prepare myself for the truth that was coming. Others always hope they're wrong. Even when every sign points toward a truth we don't want to face, we hope. For days after that strange photo message, I tried to convince myself there might be an explanation. Maybe the phone slipped. Maybe someone tapped the wrong thing. But deep down, I knew. Fear doesn't live in shadows unless someone is holding the light away. 3 days later, Rafiq invited us again for dinner, this time including my sister, my brother-in-law, and a few of his friends. The moment I stepped into their apartment, my instincts screamed. The air felt heavy, too quiet, too controlled. Like a room arranged not for comfort, but for performance. Lena greeted us with a smile that wasn't hers. Her voice sounded like it came from somewhere far away. "Ma, thank you for coming." She touched my arm gently. Her fingers were cold. Her eyes said everything. "Please behave. Please don't ask questions. Please don't make him angry." I nodded slightly, a silent promise. "I'm here." Dinner felt like walking across thin ice. Rafiq was unusually charming, laughing loudly, telling stories, keeping everyone entertained. His friends adored him. My sister whispered to me twice, "He's such a nice boy." Lena is lucky. I didn't respond. Because the nicest smiles often hide the deepest shadows. Rafiq kept touching Lena's shoulder, her back, her arm, not lovingly, but possessively. As if reminding her, "Don't forget who you belong to." At one point, when she got up to refill a water jug, he tightened his jaw. "You should have asked me first," he murmured, low enough for only her and for me to hear. She froze, then smiled, then sat back down. My heart clenched. He didn't shout. He didn't raise a hand. He didn't need to. Control whispered much louder than cruelty ever could. The discovery came the way earthquakes come, quiet at first, then suddenly everything shifts. Rafik was serving tea when he said it. A single, careless sentence. He placed a cup in front of me, then looked at Lena and snapped, "Try not to cry on the floor this time." It embarrassed me the last time. He said it casually, like it was normal, like it was nothing. But Lena went still. Everything in the room went still. My sister's fork froze midair. The clock ticked twice, loudly, painfully. Something inside my chest cracked. I asked softly, "What last time?" Lena's eyes widened in panic. Rafik shrugged. "You know, when she cried after I corrected her. She gets overly dramatic. Sensitive people exaggerate everything." He said it with a smirk. A smirk that told me he thought I was too powerless to understand. Too polite to question him. Too old to see the truth. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gasp. I didn't argue. I simply asked, "What did you correct her for?" He laughed, and said, "She shouldn't leave the house without permission. Wives need structure." Lena's hand shook so hard her spoon hit the bowl and clattered. She flinched at the sound. A sound shouldn't scare a woman. A spoon shouldn't break a heart. But it did. I stood up slowly. Rafik looked confused. Guests watched, unsure what was happening. I walked to Lena. She didn't look at me. She stared at her plate, breathing too fast. I placed my hand on her shoulder. She stiffened. "Lena," I said gently, "look at me." She didn't. She couldn't. I lifted her chin softly. Her eyes, the eyes of my little girl, were full of fear, apology, and a pain she'd been holding alone. I whispered, "Has he hurt you?" She didn't answer with words. But sometimes silence is the loudest confession. Her lower lip trembled. Her breath hitched. Tears she had tried to swallow for months finally began to fall. That was my discovery. Not the words. Not the hints. Not the photo. Not the controlling comments. It was her tears, the kind she tried so hard to hide, that told me everything. Rafik's chair scraped loudly against the floor as he stood up, sensing danger. "Stop making a scene," he snapped. "You're putting ideas in her head." I turned to him slowly. My voice steady, cold, steady as truth itself. "I don't need to put anything in her head. You've done enough." He opened his mouth to argue. But at that moment, in front of everyone, my daughter's body shuddered with a quiet sob she couldn't suppress. It silenced the whole room. Because you can deny a rumor. You can deny a story. You can deny a whisper. But you cannot deny a woman shaking hands. Rafik tried to regain control. "She's lying. She's manipulating you." I stepped between them. "Don't speak about her. Not right now." He clenched his jaw. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "She's my wife." I met his eyes. "And she was my daughter long before she became your wife." For the first time, I saw fear flicker in his expression. A momentary crack in his bravado. Because people like him know once a mother sees the truth, she becomes unstoppable. Lena clung to me, crying softly into my sorry. That moment was my betrayal. Not hers. Not Rafik's. Mine. Because I realized I had betrayed her for months, by believing her lies of safety, by trusting her excuses, by hoping she could handle it alone. Mothers protect. But I had waited too long. Now I knew. And now, I had to act. I didn't take Lena home. That night, I carried her home. Not physically, but in every way a mother carries a child who finally stops pretending she is fine. She didn't speak much as we left the apartment. Her steps were small, unsure, as if she expected someone to call her back, to order her to return, to remind her she didn't have permission to walk away. But nobody called. The silence behind us felt like a curtain falling on the life she'd been forced to perform. Inside my house, she sat on the sofa, pulling her knees close to her chest. Her eyes were red, her breath shallow. I didn't bombard her with questions. She'd been questioned enough. Instead, I brought her a blanket, her favorite tea, and sat beside her, close enough to be felt, but far enough to not overwhelm. After a long while, she whispered, "He's going to be angry." I placed my hand over hers. "No one gets to be angry at you for feeling safe," I said softly. She didn't reply, but she didn't pull her hand away either. For Lena, that was a beginning. That night, after she fell asleep on my lap, I made a decision. A mother's instinct is quiet, but when it speaks with clarity. I wouldn't confront Rafiq with shouting. I wouldn't storm into their apartment. People like him feed off confrontation. They twist it, manipulate it, turn it into another reason to control. No, I needed to act differently. Smarter. Calmer. Like light slipping under a closed door, slow, silent, impossible to stop. The next morning, Lena woke up looking exhausted but lighter, as if simply being in a safe home let her breathe again. I handed her breakfast. She stared at it for a long moment before whispering, "I forgot what it feels like to eat without rushing." I smiled gently. "You have all the time you need now." For the first time since her marriage, she ate slowly. That simple act broke my heart and healed it at the same time. While she showered, I stepped outside to the porch, dialed my phone, and called the only person I trusted to handle this with care. My brother. A calm, methodical man who understood complicated situations without adding fire. He answered on the second ring. "Didi?" I kept my voice steady. "I need you to come." Quietly. And alone. He didn't ask why. He just said, "I'll be there." Sometimes family is the one place where explanations begin only after someone arrives. An hour later, he came, sat at my dining table, and listened while I spoke. Not the full story. I didn't repeat Lena's pain in detail. She'd lived it enough. But I told him the truth. She's afraid. Her spirit is shrinking. And he controls everything. My brother took a slow breath, his jaw tightening for just a moment before he composed himself. "All right," he said. "Then we take this step by step. Not forcefully. Not emotionally. Step by step." He explained what we could do, not legally, not dramatically, but safely. "Does she want help?" he asked. I hesitated. Wanting help and being ready for help are two different things. "I think she does," I said softly. "But she's scared." He nodded. "Then we help her gently. She chooses the pace. We provide the protection." Protection. A word I hadn't heard in months. Later that evening, Rafiq called. The phone vibrated on the table, his name glowing on the screen. Lena froze. Her breath quickened. Her hands shook slightly. "Ma," she whispered, terrified. "What do I do?" I placed my hand over hers. "You don't have to answer," I said gently. Her eyes filled with tears, the kind that come when someone hears words they should have heard long ago. The call ended. Then came another. And another. I silenced the phone. Not her. The phone. Because silence shouldn't belong to fear. It should belong to peace. By midnight, Lena had fallen asleep again, exhausted by the storm inside her. I checked on her every 20 minutes like she was the child who used to wake up from nightmares and crawl into my bed. She didn't wake. But her sleep wasn't peaceful. Her hand kept clutching the pillow like she feared something might pull it away. A mother's heart breaks quietly. The next morning, I found her sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone. "He apologized," she whispered. I didn't respond. She read his message, "I love you. Come home. We should talk. You misunderstood. Please don't embarrass me." The words "embarrass me" made her flinch. I kneeled beside her. "Do you want to go back?" I asked calmly. She shook her head instantly, tears rising. "No, but if I don't, he'll..." She didn't finish the sentence. Fear filled the silence for her. I held her trembling hands. "You don't have to go back," I said. "Not today. Not tomorrow. Not ever unless you feel safe." She broke. Completely. Crying into my shoulder, releasing months of fear she had swallowed alone. That was my action. Not revenge. Not confrontation. Not shouting. Just giving my daughter a safe place to fall. But life doesn't pause when safety arrives. Control gets louder when it feels threatened. That afternoon, Rafiq showed up at my door. He knocked, then knocked again, harder. Lena stiffened in the hallway, panic rising in her eyes. "Ma, please." I touched her cheek. "Go to your room. I'll handle this." She ran quietly down the hall, closing the door softly behind her. I stepped to the front door and opened it only halfway. Rafiq stood there, calm on the outside, boiling underneath. "I'm here for my wife," he said. "She's resting," I replied. "She needs to come home. She's not ready. She belongs with me. She belongs where she feels safe." His jaw tightened. "You're interfering in my marriage." I held his gaze. "And you're hurting my daughter." He blinked, not expecting me to say it aloud. "You think you know what's happening? You don't." "But she does," I said softly. "And that's enough." He exhaled sharply, stepping back, trying to compose himself. "This isn't over," he warned. Then he turned and walked away. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel powerful. I felt steady. Because mothers don't win fights. We simply refuse to lose our children. Rafiq didn't know it yet, but the days of him controlling her life were coming to an end. And the truth, the full truth, was about to surface in a way he could never control. Rafiq didn't return for 2 days. And in those 2 days, Lena started to breathe like a human being again. She slept without looking over her shoulder. She laughed small, soft, careful laughs, as if testing whether joy was still allowed. She helped me cook, humming under her breath, forgetting for a moment to be afraid. It was like watching a wilted plant find sunlight. But sunlight has a way of exposing things that shadows hide. On the 3rd day, everything changed. Not because of something I said, but because of something he did. And the whole world saw it. It was a small family gathering, my niece's engagement ceremony. Only close relatives, simple decorations, soft music, and a table full of homemade food. Lena didn't want to go at first. She was afraid Rafiq would show up. But my brother gently convinced her, "You don't have to hide. You didn't do anything wrong." So she came. Wearing a pastel blue sari she used to love in her college days, before she learned to shrink herself. She looked beautiful. Not the kind of beautiful that comes from makeup, the kind that comes from relief. The hall filled with relatives who hadn't seen her in months. Aunties hugged her, uncles asked how she was doing, cousins circled around her excitedly. She tried to smile, but her eyes darted toward the entrance every few seconds. "He won't come here," I assured her quietly. But I was wrong. He did. I saw him before she did. Rafiq walked in, shoulders stiff, jaw clenched, eyes searching the room like someone trying to reclaim something he believed belonged to him. As soon as Lena spotted him, her entire body froze. Her trembling returned instantly, like muscle memory. He approached her fast, too fast. But before he could reach her, my brother stepped between them. A calm, firm wall. "Not here," he said. Rafiq tried to brush past him. "This is my wife. Move." My brother didn't raise his voice. He didn't touch him. He simply said, "She's with family. If you want to speak to her, you speak to us too." That's when things shifted. Because Rafiq wasn't expecting an audience. Control thrives in private. It weakens under light. The room grew silent as people turned toward the commotion. Aunties whispered. Uncles exchanged glances. Cousins stood alert. Everyone was watching. Rafiq's confidence cracked. He forced a smile. "I just want to take her home." Lena stepped slightly behind me, not hiding, but grounding herself. "I'm not ready," she said softly. It was the first time I'd heard her speak a boundary out loud. Rafiq's mask slipped. For a second, he looked almost shocked that she had spoken at all. Then he leaned in closer to her and said quietly, but not quietly enough, "Stop embarrassing me." That sentence traveled through the hall like a cold breeze. The older aunties stiffened. The uncles frowned. My niece stopped mid-laugh. People don't always know the details of a marriage, but they know the tone of a threat. And Rafiq had just exposed himself. My brother stepped forward. "This is not the place," he repeated calmly. But Rafiq couldn't back down now, not with so many eyes on him. He puffed his chest and said loudly, "She's my wife. She should be with me." not running back to her mother every time she gets emotional. Every head in the room turned sharply at that. Every mother in that hall felt something burn inside her. Because his words weren't just disrespectful, they revealed the truth he had been hiding. If he needed to defend himself, he was already losing. Lena's aunt spoke first. A soft-spoken woman normally, but firm when it mattered. "She's not running," she said. "She's resting." Another relative added quietly, "And she's safe here." A cousin stepped closer to Lena protectively. For the first time, her pain had witnesses. Not gossipers, not critics, but people who cared. And Rafik realized too late what that meant. Because once a community sees, they don't unsee. He tried one last attempt. "Lena, tell them you're coming home." Everyone's eyes turned to her. And in that moment, she did something miraculous. She lifted her chin. Her voice shook, but it didn't fail. "I'm staying with my mother," she whispered. "For now." He inhaled sharply. "You don't get to decide," my brother cut him off, his voice low and steady. "She does." And she just did. Rafik looked around the room, at the disapproving faces, the protective stances, the quiet unity forming around my daughter. He had walked in expecting control. He walked out realizing control doesn't survive truth. Not when truth stands in the light. He left the hall red-faced and furious. But he left alone. And Lena, for the first time in years, didn't follow him. She sat down beside me, her hand slipping into mine. I didn't think I could do that," she whispered. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. "You didn't do it alone," I said softly. "You had us." She leaned her head on my shoulder and exhaled, a long, shaky breath she'd been holding for years. That was the moment everything changed. Not because a secret was revealed, but because she finally chose herself. And everyone saw it. Rafik didn't call for a week. Not once. Not to ask how she was. Not to apologize. Not even to argue. Silence can be cruel, but sometimes it's a blessing in disguise. Because in that silence, my daughter began to heal. The first few nights, she still jolted awake from nightmares. She still held her breath when a door shut too loudly. She still whispered sorry out of habit every time she bumped into something. But slowly, gently, with time and patience, the girl I once knew began to return to herself. She helped me water the plants each morning. She cooked her favorite dishes. Again. She played old songs on her phone while folding laundry. She even hummed along one day. When I heard that small melody float through the room, I stopped where I was because it wasn't just humming. It was hope. Soft, fragile, reborn hope. One evening, she came to me holding a cup of tea. "Ma, can I tell you something?" I nodded. She sat beside me, eyes focused on her hands. I thought, if I stayed quiet, if I behaved, if I didn't make him angry, everything would get better. She swallowed hard. But every time I tried to be smaller, he found new ways to make me feel even smaller. I didn't interrupt. I didn't tell her I had known. I didn't say, "I told you so." I just held her hand. "Ma, why didn't I leave sooner?" she whispered. My heart tightened, not from anger, from the weight of how many women ask themselves that very question. So I said the only truth I knew, because you believed in love longer than he deserved. A tear slid down her cheek, but it wasn't the same kind of tear she used to cry. This one wasn't fear. It was release. The next day, she did something I'll never forget. She went to the mirror, tied her hair back, and said softly, "I want to work again." For months, she hadn't been allowed to step outside without permission. She'd left her job because he insisted a wife should focus on home. But now, she wanted her life back. "Are you sure?" I asked gently. She nodded. For the first time, yes. "I'm sure." Those words filled our little kitchen like morning light. In the following days, she updated her resume, met old colleagues for coffee, rearranged her bedroom, bought 2 new Curtis, started taking evening walks. Every step she took, no matter how small, restored a piece of herself he had taken. Healing isn't glamorous. It's slow, quiet, tender. And I watched it blossom right in front of me. But the biggest change came one afternoon when she returned home holding a white envelope. "Ma, I filed for separation, she said quietly. Not with fear, not with guilt, but with a calmness that comes only from a woman who has finally stopped apologizing for her own existence. I hugged her tightly, not because I wanted this future for her, but because she finally chose the future she deserved. Word spread through the family. Cousins called to check on her. Aunties sent food. Uncles offered help if needed. Her college friend drove across town just to sit with her for an hour. Support came from places I didn't expect. She wasn't hiding anymore. And when a woman stops hiding, the world stops doubting her strength. Then came the day she told me something that broke me and healed me at the same time. "Ma, I think I can breathe in my own body again." I closed my eyes. Because as a mother, you spend your life praying your children find joy, but you never imagine praying for them to feel safe in their own skin. Rafik eventually called. He wanted to talk. He wanted to explain. He wanted one more chance. But Lena looked at me and shook her head. Her voice was steady when she said, "I don't need explanations. I need peace." She blocked his number. And that was the moment she truly stepped into her new life. Weeks passed. Her laughter sounded fuller. Her steps felt lighter. Her eyes didn't dart around the room anymore. She started wearing colors again, yellow, mint, soft pink. One evening, while she was setting the dining table, she said, "Ma, I'm learning to be proud of myself again." I looked at her for a long moment. The girl who once flinched at her own shadow now stood tall in the warm glow of our living room. Resilient, quietly powerful, healing. And I whispered, "You didn't just survive, you returned to yourself." She smiled a real smile. "Ma, thank you for not giving up on me." I shook my head gently. "No, baby, you didn't give up on yourself. I just walked beside you until you remembered who you were." Her healing wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't instant. It was steady, honest, brave. And every day, she chose it again. Because healing is not what happens to you, it's what you claim for yourself. And she claimed it fully. You know, when I look back on this chapter of our lives, I don't think about the pain first. I think about the strength it took for my daughter to rise above it. I think about the quiet courage she carried inside her even when she couldn't feel it yet. People often imagine that breaking free from hurt comes with shouting or slamming doors or grand moments of strength. But most of the time, it's just a trembling breath. A whispered, "No more." A woman finally choosing peace over fear. My daughter didn't heal overnight. She healed in tiny moments, watering the plants, folding laundry, stepping outside without looking over her shoulder. And every small moment stitched her back together, thread by gentle thread. I learned something too. A mother's instinct is rarely wrong, but love sometimes makes us wait for the truth to reveal itself. And when it finally does, our job isn't to judge. It's to hold, to steady, to lift. If you're listening to this and someone you love is hurting behind closed doors, I hope you remember, your support might be the one light they follow out of the dark. And if you are the one hurting, please hear me when I say this. There is no shame in choosing safety. There is no weakness in asking for help. Your life is worth more than your silence. Now let me ask you, my dear listener. If you discovered a loved one was suffering quietly, would you wait for them to speak, or would you gently reach for their hand before they fall? Tell me in the comments. And if you'd like to hear more real-life stories like this, subscribe to Andy Diaries for new stories every day.